A new 2018 United Soccer League season comes to you just north of the southern border. Rio Grande Valley Toros and HEB Park are set to open the 2018 campaign against a newcomer in the Western Conference, St. Louis FC. Hello, everybody, and welcome. So much excitement today for opening day. Morgan Conklin, former Virginia Tech Hokie, alongside. I'm Mike Watts. RGV, new coach Gerson Echeverry. St. Louis FC, new coach Anthony Pulis. Neither team made the playoffs last year, so today could be a start towards something special.
And looking at this RGV team, you have just 5 returners from last year, and they know the frustration from this past year. A bit disappointed, especially being able to make the playoffs in 2016. They know what that success is like. Disappointment from this past year. They've been setting the tone in training because they want to get back there with this 2018 season.
For St. Louis, if they're trying to get their offense going, maybe a good way to do that is go sign one of the great goal scorers in the league like Corey Herzog.
And we're used to seeing him in Pittsburgh Yellow. Had a fantastic 2 years in Pittsburgh, 27 goals with them. But earlier this week, GM Jeremy Allenbaugh for St. Louis said he might be from Pennsylvania, but he is a St. Louis guy. He said he's quick, he's good with movement, but it's his work ethic that sets him apart. That is really his best attribute.
Herzog played with and against Anthony Pulis, so he knows him well, one of the best goal scorers in the USL last year. On the other side, Todd Wharton is a known commodity. He's going to need to lead the offense and this young RGV team.
He was just named captain this past week, Todd Wharton, and he's a player that you've heard his name, you see his stats, but nothing really jumps out at you. But he is so consistent. Earlier this week, also, Coach Echeverry said that he just does everything right. He is the player that they really rely on, fills the space in the midfield, can score when needed, and they're going to look to him to carry this team.
So Todd Wharton and this RGV team are hoping to return to the heights of 2 years ago when they finished second in the USL's Western Conference. They start a 3-game homestand at one of the gems of the stadia in United Soccer League, HEB Park. For St. Louis, year number 4, they've never made the playoffs. Get a new coach and a new offense, turn it around. We find out next. St. Louis and RGV have taken the field and fans into the stands. This is a team that had the 5th highest average attendance in USL last year in year 1 at HEB Park. Morgan Conklin alongside Mike Watts. Let's meet the starters for opening day. Here's the RGV starting order. And Morgan, all you can say is they're different. They're very different than last year.
And it sounds like we're stating the obvious, but it's so true. You have 2 starters back in Kai Green and Todd Wharton. We already mentioned Wharton. He's paired in the middle with Pablo Aguilar. They both played together at UVA. So look, at University of Virginia. So look for them really controlling the midfield together. Kai Green has experience, especially with this coach, played together at Seton Hall, played for him. So look at just how, I mean, I don't know what we're going to expect from them. I really don't know what, but it's a new group.
For St. Louis, a ton of new players. And Anthony Pulis, we don't know exactly how he lines up because he was at OCB last. What's his system? We don't know.
Well, that's the same type of thought, but we know more about these players. Christian Valesky and Corey Herzog up top. I'm excited to see the two of them and how they work together. Wall Fall in the middle with Tony Walls, Joey Calistri out wide, Lewis Hilton. I mean, you just have players with so much experience in this league. Not exactly sure what we're going to see, but we know that we're going to get that energy.
And Sean Reynolds is starting at center back. He won USL Cup in mid-November for Louisville City FC. Both these teams trying to unseat a Swope Park Rangers side that has won the Western Conference playoffs and gone to USL Cup final in 2 consecutive years. It's the orange of RGV. It's the white kits for St. Louis. And we welcome you to a new season in the United Soccer League at HEB Park in South Texas. First touch for Tony Walls, one of 5 players that was on this roster last year, finds themselves in the starting lineup after an offseason that saw Preki leave the equation and Anthony Pulis come up from Orlando City B. Zaldivar to throw, the 22-year-old Argentine. And Green knocks it back. Touch for Jake Fennelson. And the fouls against Wall Fall, who really impressed in Rochester last year. Rather, he was the one fouled.
Mike, you asked in the open, what are we going to see from these teams? And obviously we see the lineups and you see the names, both new faces on both teams, but you have to wonder, we don't really know because obviously there's 2 coaches with each squad, new coaches, and they both have different systems. We assume we'll see somewhat of the same thing from RGV, obviously being the affiliate of the Houston Dynamo. We expect to kind of see the same style of play that's brought down from the MLS level. But when you look at St. Louis, are we going to see a bit of what Orlando played with last year? Was that Pulis' system? Is that what he was told to play with from the first team? We don't really know, and in our coach calls, that was kind of what we heard from both sides, is they weren't exactly sure what to prepare for.
Calistri was chasing after that. Both coaches sort of felt like the other had done a good job of not letting their opposition see how they would play at the outset of this season. Fennelson goes backing into his goal. This is Guillermo Delgado. Zaldivar crosses toward the back post. Not the right touch from Wharton. Jerson Echeverry comes over from Seton Hall, where he spent the last 5 years. He's known Wilmer Cabrera for a long time at the youth national team level, and they played together in Colombia. So it's not like they're unfamiliar, but Jerson Echeverry is going to try and implement what Wilmer Cabrera brought to this playoff team 2 years ago, and when he moved on to Houston, what he's now implementing there.
And that was the thing with St. Louis. They were almost saying that they feel that RGV has buried a bit of their game footage. They weren't able to find much from the preseason, but you have to think that they're expecting a very similar style of play, possessing, but also knowing going in to Rio Grande Valley that it's going to be tough to play. The field is big, it's hot, it's windy, so they kind of had some factors to be aware of, but it is the first game. And obviously these teams had preseason, but it is USL competition week 1 and really the first time that they're all together playing at this level.
Fennelson will grab this for Anthony Pulis. He played with him at Orlando City B last year, and they're without Tomas Gomez at the outset, which sort of made the goalkeeping position a bit tougher for Anthony Pulis to begin the season.
And in our calls, it seemed like they expected Gomez to come in and be the starter. He's been successful in his years with Rochester, but on the call, Pulis said that it's Fennelson now, and it's his position to lose. And Gomez, once he's back healthy, he has to work to get that goalkeeping position back. It's not just going to be handed over.
Twice the Golden Glove winner in USL, but of course it was for Bob Lilly's Rochester Rhinos, who have always found a way to get the best out of their goalkeepers, including Brandon Miller, who had won Goalkeeper of the Year, leading the Rhinos' 2015 USL Cup championship. Nico Corti starts in goal, the 21-year-old out of California. Goalkeeping situation a little different for RGV. They got rid of everybody, started fresh, and we were told that they're nitpicking to find who starts and who's the number 2 between him and Matt Sanchez.
Well, you have a player like Corti who's won 3 national championships at Stanford.
And only started, to be fair, in one of those seasons, but he also didn't allow a goal all 6 of those games. RGV moving forward. Service is in behind, and handled well by St. Louis FC. Put it away from Aguilar. Jonathan Barton wears the captain's armband for St. Louis at the outset. Hilton misfires. Kai Green will control. It's a long run, and you can see they're already trying to play this left-hand wing. It's Chuy Enriquez. Shot is on and handled easily by Fennelson. That was Guillermo Delgado, who was a great goal scorer for the University of Delaware.
One of the first opportunities, really, that we've seen in it came from nothing, almost. Getting down into the corner, Enriquez chasing that ball, and not a great ball sent in, not an awful ball. I mean, early on, I expected to see just simple plays, connecting passes, just to build that confidence. But I also like that you see these RGV forwards tracking down balls that maybe they don't need to, or maybe they probably won't get to, but still the effort is there to try to create something from it every now and then.
And you look at Chuy Enriquez, and you think to Jose Escalante and how electric he could be on the wings. It's a good sign that they've found someone with that kind of pace to work on that wing here this year. As Hilton, who came out of Charlotte Independence, puts the ball back in play. Hilton drives it long. Ball finds its way through. Valesky fell down. Kai Green in a bit of trouble. Fouls against Zach Wright, who was just recently signed by RGV out of North Carolina. There's no flag for offside. Kai Green will throw for an RGV team that is trying to find itself a little bit here at the outset with just a couple of players who are back from last year in their starting order. Not a great first touch. Barton goes sliding in.
This game is choppy so far. The touches aren't there, the passes aren't going, and it's because it's early in the season and it is the first game, but still you want to see both these teams find their rhythm, find their momentum. You can see St. Louis early when they have the ball, trying to draw out some RGV players, find that ball in behind, whether it's wide or diagonal across. But RGV is just trying to build. They've had a couple options down wide, but you can't really tell their game plan yet because there hasn't been much possession or control on either side.
As Reynolds carries ahead, and St. Louis will try and work this out again. And now you can see RGV beginning to pressure Reynolds a bit more. In the middle of the field, but Aguilar's got it. Kyle Adams comes from New Zealand. Will work with Corti.
We see a lot of safe back passes, so midfielders playing the ball back to their defenders, or an outside back finding a center back, just playing the safe ball. And then it's the next pass that's letting both of these teams down. That ball that's supposed to play make someone, or whether it's an entry pass or finding a midfielder again, is what's letting both sides down, which is why there's no real feel of the game yet.
Barton tosses in, and Herzog is able to get a good touch to it. Aguilar. And now Wharton, Kai Green, who played for Jerson Echeverry at Seton Hall. And now Wharton played for him in the Regional Olympic Development Program. A little bit in the Youth National Team program, too. Aguilar. Green. Reynolds backing in. Kai Green reverses. Wharton. Wharton stepping by and sending the cross in. St. Louis trying to counter rather directly.
Get up! Get up!
Adams keeps it away from Christian Valesky.
I like this build-up down the right side. I see what RGV's doing, and Mike, we both know when Kai Green can get forward and get into the attack, it's usually a good thing. If the pace of the pass, though, is just snapped in a little quicker, every decision is made just one bit faster, and that allows for more time on the ball, more time when you collect it.
Well, it's good space here for Aiden Stanley. Sends it up the left-hand side. Options available in the area. Ball wound across over Valesky and Herzog both. Now for a goal kick. Better possession on the last two times up the field, once for either side.
Absolutely, and RGV, it's a lot better attacking-wise, but they have to be careful when they lose it, getting back in transition, because that's going to cause them issues, is finding that defensive pressure, getting their numbers back, but also you're having to track back against guys that are really good transitioning to attack, and a Corey Herzog and a Christian Valesky. You know when the ball goes over, Corey Herzog is going to be the first guy into that space.
And when you listen to Jerson Echeverry during the week, him talking about collective defending being the problem last year and team defending errors, the easiest place to make those mistakes are after you give the ball up in the attacking half.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important, but also because your defensive structure is what you build off of. If you don't have that, you are out of sorts, and it's so easy to get disorganized when you're transitioning from attack to defense.
Zaldivar and Hilton were going after it for a while, and Zaldivar puts it back in play quickly. Knocked out by Stanley, who just recently got called up to the U20 United States national team. Wharton knocks it ahead. Ball falls in the box. Shot is on and wide from Delgado.
Watch out, Rev. Rev.
That did deflect on the way. A corner is coming.
I want to know what that would have looked like if Delgado did not slip. The way that he brings this ball down right in front of him, beautiful touch. He has too much space there. You see Tony Walsh trying to get to him, trying to cover to him, but For Delgado to bring that down is very well done on his part, but for St. Louis, defensively, it has to be tighter. You cannot allow someone to touch in your box.
15th minute and the first set piece of the match here for RGV. Skipping all the way through dangerously, and Joey Calistri will collect and try and carry away for St. Louis. Slid back to Stanley. And now Wall Fall. The overlap, Stanley inside the area. Stanley plays it across behind Valesky. Launched away by Chuy Enriquez. And now is there a chance to counter? Reynolds does well. And so too does Tony Walls. Keep that away from the goal poacher Delgado. Quarter of an hour gone. It's the first game of the USL season, one of two tonight. Calistri cutting inside. Lines it off of Connor Donovan, guy who played for Anthony Pulis last year in Orlando, and a corner for St. Louis.
Set pieces are a place where this St. Louis club feels that they were good during the preseason. They felt that they were all on the same page, all knew where they need to go when these opportunities happen.
Service long from Hilton. And instead of conceding a throw, unluckily, Tony Walls will concede a goal kick. Well, not a ton to show for that 60-40 possession advantage, is there? This will bounce all the way through, and Fennelson is at the top of his box to control. Hilton, good pressure from RGV to set St. Louis all the way back.
Very organized. When they have the time to set up, you can just see that they are spread out on the field, but they're compact enough where it's difficult to break through them and find the lines.
A 1-on-2, and still Valesky fighting. Can get by Donovan. Took it all the way to Nico Corti. He's making his first professional start. And now Zaldivar, pocket of space. Zaldivar continuing still past Fall. Hands off, ball across is handled by Fennelson. Any rebound could have been real danger with Delgado on the doorstep.
I love this break, the way that RGV gets forward. The field is slippery. These players are falling. You can see them tripping a bit. A good ball across, but this save from Fennelson, the way he gets low but held onto it, because like you said, Mike, if that was tapped at all, that was going to be a finish. The ball would have been right in front of goal.
Whistle against Zaldivar. Tony Walls back to his feet. Stanley does well, finds Calistri. Stanley again. Slid out, plenty of contact. It's a corner to St. Louis, and the young kid, Stanley, out of the St. Louis Scott Gallagher Academy, has gotten forward a bunch.
I love seeing that. I love when there's an outside player, an outside back getting into the attack. But what I like also is St. Louis, they're trying to make those little runs in behind. RGV's done a good job so far. Kai Green there on the play before. Connor Donovan did a great job using his body, but it looks like that's what's on for St. Louis. They're trying to find those little pockets in behind.
Another corner for Lewis Hilton. Hilton drives toward Fall, and it's caught by Corti. Corti firing that off the back of a St. Louis defender. Comes down to Barden. Fink drives long. On it back by Luke. Valesky. Wharton and Aguilar pinballing the ball upfield now. Enriquez, that's too far.
When this Rio Grande Valley team has time defensively to set up, they are organized and they are tough to get by. But when they're caught a little bit out of position, there's too much space in between the midfield and the back line. The back line's done a good job so far, and they've been able to play court to then get the ball out. But in that last one, Derek Luke does the best that he can, gets that header out as much as he can while he's running back, and it drops in the middle. There's no RGV midfielders there to clean it up, which allows a second chance for St. Louis.
Here's Stanley again, pushing way across the halfway line. Aguilar, is there space to exploit here for RGV? So is it as simple for a new coach as to say, tighten things up a little bit and keep the lines a little tighter? What are you looking to do then?
Well, the lines are tight. Like I said, when they have time, it's more react. When that transition happens, I mean, honestly, nobody wants to defend from attacking to defending. It's not as fun as when you win the ball defensively and then can go forward. Straight up, it's not as fun. But it comes down to you have to do the job.
Well, and that was your job when you played. That was your job.
Exactly, but I also, as a defender, even loved when I was able to attack.
Right.
But that being said, they're doing a good job when they have time, but when it happens, it just has to be a little quicker, and most of that does fall on Todd Wharton, Pablo Aguilar, because they're in that middle.
Valesky lifting over the top. Herzog. This will drift wide. Goes to work on Adams. Hilton for wall fall. And back to Reynolds. Here's Sam Fink. Enriquez. That did get out. A throw for St. Louis. 4th year in the league. This year, preseason under Anthony Pulis, 4 wins, 2 draws. And Morgan, they feel really optimistic this year, but the fans there have felt optimistic about it the last couple of years too. So there's a belief around the organization, you got to go prove it on the field this year if you want to think that you deserve to be in the playoffs.
And looking at it on paper, it's extremely exciting. But obviously we've heard from coaches and we've talked about it. It's so difficult to kind of base what you think is going to happen over the course of the season just on a roster or what you see on paper. But it is exciting. And as a fan, if you're a fan, you see the names that they've brought in, the experience they have, the talent, and moving conferences. So you're kind of going to face some new teams with a different style of play. It is exciting.
If I'm a St. Louligan, I'm very excited about this season. It's lofted long, comes down to Wharton. Enriquez, putting on good moves here, and Walls stole it away.
Come out and keep it. Keep the ball.
St. Louis going back to the West. They've switched conferences these last few years, which means they'll see newcomers in the league. Out west, Las Vegas and Fresno open up their new expansion sides this week. Part of a 34-game USL season comprising of 33 teams, 6 are new to the equation. Stanley continuing still, but that ball had gotten out. Green. Long ball. Corti will contain, but Valesky, that's dangerous. Sliding in. The goalkeeper seemingly already in fine position. And Christopher Scruggs will have a conversation here.
I think that might be called welcome to the USL. Not needed at all. Maybe Valesky trying to make a point there.
Is that a message?
Corti has every right to be upset with that one. I'd be pretty livid. My team would be livid.
As Corti drives this away. Out of Stanford, where he spent 5 years and only started his last campaign. Cardinal with a three-peat at the NCAA level, starting with Jordan Morris. Ended up being MLS Rookie of the Year, and then on to the third year last year, with Corti finally getting his chance. Select is the official soccer ball of the USL. For the latest Select products, special offers, please visit selectsportamerica.com. Receive free shipping on orders over $50. Fall. Race forward, Aguilar knocks it ahead. He's dangerously fouled. Just beyond the halfway line by Lewis Hilton. Lewis Hilton will pick up a yellow card for that.
We've seen this game change a little bit the last couple minutes, get a little bit more intense with some of these tackles. I think Hilton was going in for the ball. He just wasn't there fast enough. But oftentimes that's what leads to some of these free kicks, is when defensively you're trying to step to the ball, or offensively just trying to win it, and you don't time it correctly.
I think everyone on the field would like to score the first goal of a new USL season. I'm not sure Lewis Hilton came in hoping that he would get the first card of the USL season, but that role is all his now. Zaldivar dancing in on Reynolds. Fall knocks it back. Stanley. Mature move by the 17-year-old to play that out. By far the youngest player on the field. Wharton from way outside, saved by Fennelson. If you want to try and score the first goal of a USL season, you want it to look like this.
I think Wharton just put his hand in the air and said, me, 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 I want to score it. I mean, just a laser. We've seen him score like that before. We've seen him just put a rocket on frame. Todd Wharton just showed if you give him space, he's going to take it.
Watch out, ref. Watch out, ref. Watch out, ref.
Derek Luke in swinger off of Lewis Hilton. Kept alive by Aguilar. Not a great clearance, but that's more convincing. Hear exclusive stories directly from the USL's players in USLsoccer.com's From the Pitch, with written and video content that provides unfiltered access and a first-person look into the professional game and players' everyday lives.
I really like that whole feature and section that they're doing with players, and I put it on Twitter. We see what they do on the weekends or during the week if there's a midweek game. We see the performance on the field, but there is so much more that goes into being a professional athlete. The time that goes into it, the training, just the dedication, and I love the fact that fans have just a front row seat to that.
Zaldivar bounces it wide of Fennelson. So RGV's getting ambitious.
I don't mind this look, but I don't want this to be what RGV just settles for. They don't need to settle for these long-range shots. Obviously, if there's a moment, you have space, take it, but I want to see them build up. They had success going up the wings, getting those numbers forward, tracking the ball. That's when they're better. They can get the ball in the corner, slot it back across. They have numbers. I don't want to just see these long-range shots.
Driven over Barden. It's Luke's throw. Anthony Pulis arguing that point with the assistant. The fourth official's been involved too. And with all the heat, there's a water break here at the half-hour mark. These teams will get a chance to hydrate. You know, if you're in the north or even at St. Louis, you might not be used to temperatures that are in the 80s and even the 90s, but here in this USL opener in the middle of March in the Rio Grande Valley, it's time for everyone to slow it down. So not only is this a chance at getting some water here, but if you're St. Louis, you're trying to get this offense going. Christian Valesky has been busy already, and think back to last year, he's led the team he's been on each of the last 3 years in goal scoring. He's been busy already.
And that is such a huge player for them to keep this season, especially with a lot of transition, new coach, but to have a player like Valesky who has been successful in St. Louis, the fans know him, he likes playing there. It's just huge for this team.
Valesky, a guy who scored 8 times last year. He was oftentimes their man at the penalty spot. And now he gets to share a little bit of this scoring glory with Corey Hertzog. We've seen those two in unison leading this 4-4-2 often here tonight.
And I'm just interested over the course of the season how it looks between them. Does one take a bit of a different role? Does one maybe become the setup guy for the other? How do teams defend against the two of them? Does one drop deeper? Like, I don't know what that's going to look like because they've both been such a big part and kind of are similar players. It's not like one's a huge target, this big guy who just holds up the ball. They both are mobile, like to get in behind. So I'm interested in what that looks with the two of them.
And you think back to Kevin Kerr in Pittsburgh, he really wasn't an out-and-out striker. So that was Hertzog's territory, and Kerr so often was comfortable dropping in behind. Valesky and Hertzog are similar players in a lot of ways, but they can both play make too.
And I think that is one thing that's going to make it so difficult to defend against them is because they are similar, but they both have different attributes, yet they can play either role when needed. So does one take more of a playmaker role? Does it just depend on the game? That's something that we'll have to see, and I think it'll be interesting, but also really tough to play against.
Chested back by Valesky. Zaldivar. That's a handball.
That's cheeky from Zaldivar. He didn't have much. He had time to face up.
Zaldivar plays back. Adams, pressured by Valesky. Here's Corti. Turned over in midfield. Hertzog deflected away. The slide ahead toward Hertzog taken by Zaldivar. Here's Enriquez again, where he's been most dangerous, cutting in off the wing. Nearly a nice give and go with Aguilar. That's a handball by Matthias Zaldivar.
Zaldivar's been busy. He's found his way deeper in the midfield, also gotten forward. I love that little footwork, his cut to get around Corey Hertzog and that ball that was sprayed wide. But also what I like is, obviously he lost. He wasn't able to win that tackle, but he filled in the space once the ball got forward. He was able to, if RGV kept the ball, get into the attack, but since they lost it, he was that first line of pressure because he was still getting forward.
Definitely things to like about both of these new look groups. Both both of whom missed the USL playoffs last year. St. Louis in the East, RGV out West.
And I think something else that I kind of find interesting is both teams, like you said, have the opportunity to score the first goal of the 2018 USL season. And neither one of these teams were your big offensive teams last year. You have Reno that was the highest scoring offense with 75 goals. And then you look at St. Louis, 35 goals for. And then you look at RGV, not too many as well, 37. So these are teams that had to work for goals to come their way. But they both have the opportunity to kind of set the tone tonight.
Delgado's had some chances. Valesky has gotten forward into a dangerous spot. He and Herzog have been in the area for crosses that they haven't been able to handle. Aguilar, that's on the wrong side of Delgado. Fennelson will scoop this up. He's the 8th different goalkeeper to start in St. Louis's short 3+ year history. Ryan Grass tweeted out a full list of debuts, and Tomas Gomez is not far behind. One would think he'll get a chance at some point this year, and Seth Steibel is only 19 years old, but he's available too. Here's Lewis Hilton attacking the space. Well won. It's Connor Donovan.
I've been impressed with the body positioning of Connor Donovan. He's in a position where it's not that he sees the ball every single time as a center back. St. Louis isn't trying to split him every time, but when they have tried, he's been ready for it. And he's been able to hold off a player when needed, but he's also closing the gap and able to get a foot or a touch to clear the ball.
Kai Green, long strides forward at the feet of Wright. Well, Morgan, I know I'm going to get plenty of commentary on this as Fennelson makes this catch. Do you have what it takes to beat the experts on USLsoccer.com? You can show off your knowledge of the league by picking the right results of the USL matchups each week of the season. And expert is the most loose version of the term. Nicholas Murray is an expert, the lead writer for USLsoccer.com and Human Encyclopedia. And then there's me, and then there's another member of the media, hopefully you soon. It's going to be iffy. We'll see how it goes.
I was going to say, expert is not used loosely when it comes to Nicholas Murray. Definitely you. But I'm sorry. You're my really good friend, and I believe in you always, but I think he's going to take that one pretty easily.
Yeah. Yep.
No hard feelings. It's just kind of how it is.
I predicted a draw for this game. I'm still on target to pick up my first win of the year. Aguilar overrun by Herzog, who's way back into the defensive half, and now the foul against Aguilar.
Ladies and gentlemen, your total for this, Oscar Castaneda, a happy birthday. You only turned 21.
Fink puts it back in play, part of a new center back pairing with Sean Reynolds. Fink's a familiar name in St. Louis. He was one of 2 Ironmen in the league 3 years ago. Initially joined the team on trial, went to Oklahoma City last year, dealt with injuries. Starts with Sean Reynolds, who won USL Cup with Louisville in a very busy rotation at the 3-back look that Louisville provides. It's a throw here for Barden.
One thing I really liked from hearing from some of the St. Louis front office, we heard from their general manager, president, obviously, head coach, was they're really big on their guys. And by their guys, they're St. Louis guys, the ones who are going to come in and just work hard every day. I think the comparison that was given was they're going to bring their lunch pail to work, which as a Hokie, lunch pail defense definitely stuck with me, and I'm a big fan of that. But it's just our players who are going to come in, roll up their sleeves, and work hard, but also have a good attitude about it, have good morals. And we heard that from all 3 in different aspects, and I thought that was really cool.
Zaldivar runs into Hilton and slows his roll. Wharton. Green. Wharton. RGV looking to get a cross in here. Stanley allows the corner. He touched that out, and in the 40th minute, RGV going to try and put St. Louis under some pressure.
RGV got lucky to get anything out of this. It was way too slow. The ball was stuck in that corner once it went to Green and back to Wharton, and finding it back to Wright, he just kept the ball at his feet. It either has to go quick or bring it back out, recycle it to the other side.
Luke goes short, gets a return ball. Luke crossing, cleared away from Adams, drops for Aguilar. Wharton, Aguilar, there's space on the wing, and they play it now. Ricochets to fall. And St. Louis, back pass that's intercepted. Aguilar at the byline, entering the area, looking, and that's cleared.
Nothing came from those two, but those buildups are very promising for RGV, but this is when they have to track back to defend. They have to get back in that shape.
Long run for Barden. Adams found Enriquez. But taken by Walls, that's a clean play. Stanley overlapping. Pushing past Green, Stanley hit that off of Kai Green. A corner for St. Louis the other way, and Stanley has just been fantastic. He's only 17. This is only 7th professional appearance.
Stanley has been very impressive for St. Louis so far. He's committed to Duke, will be there in the fall. It's easy to see why. I love how he gets forward as a defender. Isn't afraid of contact, isn't afraid to take on these older professional players who probably have a couple more years of experience. I like seeing that from him.
Corner for St. Louis. Hilton in swinger. A punch at the back of Valesky. And Valesky is whistled for the contact as Corti went to shoving through. Coming up at halftime, Jake Edwards sat down to give the presidential preview of the upcoming USL season. Look at halftime highlights and stats and some of the week 1 games to watch. Game 2 of the USL season tonight from Cheney Stadium in Tacoma. It's the opener for Seattle Sounders in their new home. S2 taking on Portland Timbers 2, a Cascadia battle. Stringing Enriquez all the way to the byline.
That ball was played from Nico Corti, goalkeeper. I think it surprised every single person on the field, but if you're Enriquez and you worked so hard to get all the way to the opposite end line, you have to save that ball. You just sprinted and tried so hard to keep it, and if you win it, your players are going to come forward, help you with numbers, but you have to keep that one in.
No advantage. They play quick, though. This is Barden. Cross field into space. Stanley goes up with Kai Green. Adams. That's out for a St. Louis throw. Looking for a handball against Adams. Play continues. Walls fall. Herzog. Barden. Contact against Aguilar and a free kick to St. Louis in the 44th minute. Make sure you cast your vote for USL Goal of the Week. It's every Monday evening on USLsoccer.com as the road to the Fans' Choice USL Goal of the Year begins week 1 and continues all season long. Wharton the best chance so far to try and jump into that race, but a good save by Fennelson to keep RGV off the board, and Fennelson off his line to collect.
Delgado couldn't quite get the touch. You could see him try to take his first touch central, which then would seal off the defender on his right side. It He wasn't clean enough, which is why the ball ran through. But I love the fact that he did that because that is one of those little small things that makes such a difference and allows a better angle going to goal.
Green stepping forward this time. Now Wharton. A slide through by Reynolds. And a free kick here to the Toros. Luke. Zaldivar dispossessed. As much space as St. Louis has seen out in front of them all day. Herzog spun it outside the frame.
Herzog wants that back, and one of the best things about him is his reaction after. He's frustrated because he knew he could get that. You see him mad with himself. He has so much time there. He's able to see exactly where he wants to shoot on that goal. A player for RGV has to step up. You can't have all your defenders dropping if you don't have someone at some point stepping up. It's fine to drop, but when it gets that close to goal, there has to be one to step forward.
You know, I love what his old head coach in Pittsburgh used to say about him. The most exuberant, biggest 11-year-old I've ever met. And I think he meant that in the most positive way.
Well, what did he say one time? If he was able to train for most of the day, he would just be out there. They have to kind of rein him in a bit.
Mm-hmm. If he could train 6 hours and it would make him better, he would do it. That's what we were told. Valesky got it wide. Barden playing over Herzog. Away from Calistri. Hilton brings this down on the turn. Reynolds knocks that too far for Stanley as we near the end of the first half.
I said this earlier, and we've still seen it over the course of the half, which is good for RGV. Defensively, they are tough to break down. That is something that they need to finish out this half and bring into the second half, is that organization. Their issues come when they're not organized, when they're coming off a transition. But when they have time and when they get numbers behind the ball, the St. Louis team is really struggling to find the gaps.
And we'll run a bit short of those 2 minutes of added time in the heat in South Texas. Both teams, a bunch of new faces. Morgan, early on, felt like they were feeling each other out. The game seemed to grow as we went along.
Absolutely. I would say after about the 10, 15-minute mark is really when we saw what these teams can do. For Rio Grande Valley, their best build-ups happen when they can find the midfield. When they make their center backs play make, it doesn't work out. They have to find the middle. Aguilar, Warden, if they can even skip and find Zaldivar, they're in an even better place.
RGV opening a 3-game homestand and a new USL season. Pulis and Echeverry looking for the perfect start. Their debut games for their new clubs. Opportunities abound, but no goals here at HEB Park. As nice as things look at HEB Park during the day, it's even better when it's lit up at night. Welcome back to South Texas, where RGV and St. Louis are scoreless at halftime in the debut game of the 2018 USL season. Morgan Conklin alongside Mike Watson. Morgan, statistically, this was pretty even because the game on the whole really did feel that way.
Yeah, and even looking at a couple more stats than this, we're pretty accurate, even with total passes, passing accuracy, everything is pretty similar. The main difference obviously is RGV shots 5-1, but shots on target just 2. We saw the best chance, Todd Wharton, with that laser from distance. I want to see a little more build-up, but taking advantage of those build-up opportunities. When they get close to goal, get a cross-off because there's numbers around for RGV.
So RGV and St. Louis both trying to find their goal-scoring acumen. Combined just 72 goals between them in their 64 combined games last year. So Rio Grande Valley at this gorgeous soccer-specific stadium. It's a gem for all to see in the USL, and it's a conversation that was a part of Jake Edwards' State of the League heading into the year. That comes up after this.
Joined today by Jake Edwards, president of the USL. Just getting ready to kick off an exciting 2018 season. Jake, thank you very much for joining us today.
Great, my pleasure.
Jake, it's been another exciting off-season for the USL, and buzz is really picking up as we're getting ready to kick off here. Talk to us about what you're looking forward to the most in 2018 and where the USL is positioning itself in the American soccer landscape.
Yeah, we've worked hard this off-season and the last few years now to create a really great league, but an aspirational league. We look at the leagues around the world and we say we would like to be in the company of some of those top leagues. We're now the second division in the US. We've worked hard to achieve that, and we aspire to be one of the top second divisions in the world. And there's some phenomenal leagues out there to aspire to that we can learn from. But things are going great. It's been a busy off-season. We've got some new teams coming on board, some great new owners coming in the league, phenomenal new players coming in the league. And it's going to be by far and away the toughest and most competitive season, but certainly it's the biggest season we've had yet. More games, more teams. We reach more communities, more fans than ever before. So this is another big year for us.
Well, the league this year certainly continues to grow, and we're welcoming 6 new teams to the USL in 2018. What are you looking forward to the most during this kickoff weekend of these teams coming in and the quality of soccer we're going to see across the league?
Yeah, 6 very exciting teams, 2 teams that are already established clubs in Indy 11 and North Carolina. Great pedigree, great fan bases, exciting soccer-specific stadiums, and Atlanta United, the lone team out of MLS coming in this season. Atlanta United breaking all kinds of records as an organization in MLS, doing great things for the sport. Fully anticipate the same for Atlanta United too. And then, of course, our new markets, Nashville and Las Vegas, Fresno. Really exciting new additions to our league, and have done tremendously well in preseason games so far, well attended. So very much looking to see how those teams and those new fan bases mix in with all the other teams we have in our league.
Back at HEB Park, they averaged over 7,000 fans a game in its inaugural season last year, but the team just 5-5-6. It's hopeful that they'll be a little more comfortable, take care of their home games. They're trying to start off the right way here in the home opener. RGV and St. Louis scoreless at halftime. Morgan Conklin alongside Mike Watts. Here are the first half highlights. And we saw most of RGV's damage come from the wing.
That's really where they were looking to exploit, especially as the game kept going. They'd find the ball in that corner, and they had numbers in the box, which was the most promising part. Maybe it didn't always come off, but they did a good job at getting numbers around when the ball was there.
Delgado, 2 really good looks here. Zaldivar trying to widen things out, slowed down a bit by wall fall, and Fennelson diving out to make sure there's no danger here.
Zaldivar was very active in that first half. As it went on in that attacking midfield area, he would find his way around the ball.
For St. Louis, how about Stanley in this first half? He and Kai Green were really battling it out.
And he's another player, but for St. Louis, who was always getting forward. But then Todd Wharton, just really the first chance of the game, wanting to take it upon himself just with the absolute rip from about 25 yards out.
Look, if you're going to lead this team this year, that's the way to do it. Try and set the tone from 40-plus yards away. RGV would have more opportunities in this first half. This skipping wide from Zaldivar. And while the statistics were pretty even, these were really the best looks for RGV.
And they were pretty good for being from distance. Oftentimes we see teams settling, but those both look like they picked the moment. They knew they had space, just like Corey Herzog did here on the other side. He was able to pick his head up, tried to squeak it to that near post, just missed wide, but cannot give Corey Herzog space.
And those are your first half statistics. St. Louis looking forward. Well, if you're going to play in the Western Conference, this is a pretty tough road to start. RGV finished second in the conference 2 years ago. San Antonio had the longest unbeaten streak of the year last year in USL. Colorado Springs at home, and then a Fresno team that's very excited about their inaugural season.
And not that St. Louis is overlooking that San Antonio game, because they're taking each game as it comes, but they're really looking forward to that home opener March 31st. They've been talking about it. They're excited for their supporters to be there. So it's exciting to open your home season anytime, but especially facing new opponents.
Toyota Stadium, March 31st. You aren't going to want to miss it if you're a St. Louis fan. On the other side, for Rio Grande Valley, this is a group that starts at this is not quite the correct schedule for them. It's next off, and then they host Reno on Tuesday, the 27th of March. They take on Sacramento at home in a 3-game homestand.
And that game against Reno is on a Wednesday, and it's at 10 a.m. So it's a bit of an interesting matchup, obviously midweek, early in the season, but also an early time. You wonder how the heat might factor into that. Obviously the time playing earlier than normal, but it's nice for them to have those 3 home games starting off before they go on the road with so many new faces, trying to build that confidence. And when we spoke with Coach Echeverry earlier this week, he was saying the best way for this team to really get ready for the season and get used to one another is playing at home, because they have that consistency and that similarity before they then have to go out on the road. 3
of their 17 home games coming in the first 3.5 weeks of the season. And you think about opening weekend in USL, there's a bunch of really juicy fixtures. Of course, later on tonight, Cheney in Tacoma will play host to their first soccer match, S2 and Timbers 2. But Saturday is a loaded slate. First game in USL for Nashville, North Carolina, Fresno, Las Vegas, part of those 6 new teams in the league.
Just a real quick round of applause for everyone involved with the scheduling. I am so excited for these games. I was able to call a couple of Las Vegas's preseason games. They are really looking forward to that Fresno one. But personally, I mean, Reno and Swope, but come on, Louisville and Nashville.
There we go.
Oh my gosh, that one. I mean, also, and then you see North Carolina, Tampa Bay, who've played in the past. But, I mean, Louisville, Nashville. I know my friend will be on the call. I'm excited to tune in, listen to him. But that matchup, that's massive. I'm excited for that one.
Martin Tyler, right? No, I'll be on the call for that, right. So it'll be Louisville and Nashville kicking us off tomorrow at Slugger Field. While Kentucky is still in the NCAA tournament, you can make it to both if you plan correctly. You can get to Slugger Field, watch that game, and then get home and watch Kentucky play as well. New player onto the pitch is Jordan Jones at halftime. He's maybe the biggest surprise on this RGV roster to this point. Just recently signed and added to the roster this week as RGV in the orange kits ready to kick us off in the second half of our season opener in 2018 in the United Soccer League. Guillermo Delgado will come off at halftime, and he did a lot of things right. And you made a good point, a ball that he brought down well in the box but slipped down on the field. If he didn't slip, does he have the first goal of the USL season? Maybe.
And I liked that from him, the pressure that he provided. But Jordan Jones is another pacey forward, 6'1", a big guy. Was drafted by LAFC earlier this year, but I'm excited to see what he can do because we heard about him on the call and we heard that he's been exciting in training, and obviously this is our first experience seeing him, and I think he's going to be a different type of player than Delgado was.
Now, Wall's lower back seems to be a little worse for the wear. Sean Reynolds knocks it ahead. You see 22 in orange is Jones, that new forward. Oh, the extra look has Kai Green striding backwards. He needs a bit of help. Lewis Hilton. Good first touch. Now out wide. Stanley on the ground. Falls in the area. Still loose. Corti picks it up finally now.
Connor Donovan once again getting in on a tackle for RGV. He has been huge for them. But all I'm going to say, as this St. Louis season continues, if you have Corey Herzog and Christian Valesky making those little passes completely on the same page, they got a little caught up with one another, but if that is clean, it is so hard to defend against that movement.
Here's Wall Fall. They're so excited to add him to the spine of their team. Overshoots. Right-hand wing. It's a goal kick here for RGV, and Nigo Corti makes his first professional start. They found him at the Dynamo and RGV goalkeeper combine. And talking with Jerson Echeverry this week, the difference between him and Matt Sanchez entering this season, not all that high. They're going to try and find minutes for both. There'll be some players coming from Houston to get minutes as well at the goalkeeper position.
He actually said it's a disaster trying to figure out who's going to play. That's how close it was.
If that's a disaster, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Two really good goalkeepers that you're confident in, that's a fine disaster.
Exactly. A really good problem to have, but obviously makes things difficult.
Spent 5 years at Seton Hall, did good things in the Big East. Had Kai Green along for part of that, the right back for Rio Grande Valley. And there's contact here, and it's a whistle against RGV. Jones doesn't seem to agree. They'll play on through Stanley. Fink. Calistri on the turn, shoved off the ball by Wharton. Whistle against Stanley. It was Zach Wright who was held up.
And Zach Wright did one of those little things by taking his first touch central, sealing off his defender. In that way, once you seal off your defender, you're either free in central or they try to take you down, try to get the ball, and then you win the foul. That's why that first touch is so important.
Wharton puts it back in play, and Zaldivar has it knocked away by Stanley. Oh, we were asking at the outset, is Stanley a guy that'll figure in big before moving on to Duke in midseason? Corti has this run right by him. Valesky was in pursuit. We were told, yeah, they're going to play a big role, some of these guys that come out of the academy. And Penn FC has changed their identity a little bit, a branding change over the offseason. The old Harrisburg City Islanders, the idea there to get the academy all the way through to the professional level. You think about St. Louis and the St. Louis Scott Gallagher Academy leading into St. Louis FC. They were sort of front runners in that whole concept, and RGV with their hybrid style of organization where Houston Dynamo makes the personnel decisions and the business decisions are run by the same group that run the Rio Grande Valley Vipers in the NBA G League. These are both front runners in terms of running a professional soccer organization in the United Soccer League.
And it's really cool, too, when you can keep your local guys and have them be successful in the area. I'm kind of switching teams, but I was talking with Bethlehem Steel's head coach Brendan Burke today, and he was talking about some of his guys who, if you look at an Anthony Fontana, 17 or 18, he's been with the Bethlehem Academy programs for about 5 or 6 years.
Ball for Jones, too far. Still alive now. Ball played back across by right. Skitters all the way out. And now Herzog will collect and work with Barden to clear the danger.
I said earlier I want RGV to get the ball and find those middle balls. 2 great services in, just no players. One was overrun. They're able to find the seams, though. Once they get to the corner, they've been able to find the seams through the St. Louis defense. Find those gaps. It just takes one player. The runs have to be a little better.
Wind picking up in South Texas on a hot night to open the USL season. That's going to be a clear card. Not sure the finger wag is going to help Connor Donovan. It's a yellow.
A yellow card has been issued to number 20, Connor Donovan.
Donovan, the first yellow card issued to RGV this year. Second issued tonight by Christopher Scruggs. Donovan, who struggled to find time at center back. Jason Christ speaking to the fact that Orlando City last year had 4, 5, 6 guys. Echeverry nearly got run over by Joey Calistri. Tough to find enough minutes when you have 6 good center backs, professional level center backs in your organization.
And Donovan has been strong tonight, but he's also a player that Echeverry has experience with in that youth regional level growing up in the regional pool. So it's cool to see the relationships between some of these RGV players and player and coach. I mean, you have guys that played at Virginia. You have guys with the Dynamo who played at Virginia, with an Eric Bird who was just signed to the first team. So it's really cool to kind of see some of these guys and the relationships they have with the coach, with Kai Green playing for Echeverry in college or through regional pools growing up. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying with that Bethlehem comment, is you have a player who was in the youth program, then played at the USL level when he was still in the academy, and then is now with the first team. And to just see that progression and some of these guys maybe being reunited with players or teammates, I think that's kind of cool.
Valesky off of Adams. You can make the argument Walls and Valesky played together in Rochester. Wall-Fall played there after those two. Gomez joins the equation, was the backup to Brandon Miller when they won the 2015 USL Cup. And then you look at the guys who come over from Orlando City. Fennelson and Albert Deke was not in the 18 tonight. Sam Fink returns but is a St. Louis guy. The roster for St. Louis FC equally has guys that Anthony Pulis is really comfortable with and that he can build a good rapport with at the outset.
And it's obviously common to be, that's a dangerous tackle. One of those very poor timed tackles doesn't need to happen.
Is Barton going to get away here with just a talking to? It looks like it's a very strong talking to at that.
I do agree that the one before was a little worse. He got ankle on that contact. With this one, it looked a little cleaner, but that was just timed very poorly. But going back to what you said, Mike, it's common, obviously, to see players reunited with players they played with in the past, being a part of the USL, or coaches, but with the first game of the season and the season being so new, it just helps because you already have relationships with some of your players and relationships on the field. And if you have that starting point of already being familiar, you're just a step ahead.
Intercepted by Kai Green. And that's a professional tactical foul. Wall fall, making sure Green didn't run through unimpeded. Gotta do what you gotta do.
Who's the basketball player from Duke who does that stuff? Grayson Allen. Am I gonna get in trouble for saying that? That's like almost a Grayson Allen play, come on.
Oh, goodness.
Am I gonna get yelled at it on Twitter for that one?
Probably not, but if I had to guess, there's a young outside back for St. Louis that won't like the Duke talk. This ball played through, shot over the bar by Zach Wright. Wright's been dangerous tonight in his professional debut.
That's a really tough angle from Wright. I see what he tried. He had a nice turn, helped by a bit of a deflection. If he can keep that low on the ground but bring it right across the 6, it forces Fennelson to decide, am I going to stay on my line? Am I going to come off? But when you just shoot that, it's a tough angle. The probability is pretty low of it going in. But if he can keep that on the ground and just whip it across, there's numbers for RGV that can run in.
Back again for Corti. And that too far. Select is the official soccer ball of the United Soccer League. For the latest Select products and special offers, visit selectsportamerica.com and you can receive free shipping on orders of $50 or more. I've collected a few match balls over the years.
Really?
Yeah. I can't dribble with them or juggle with them. I mean, I'm an irrelevant player when I have them, but I do have the balls.
Where'd you get them from? You probably shouldn't say. They're going to come looking for you. Try to get them back. Maybe I shouldn't ask you that question.
There's a sub on the way.
Every team that is off count with how many soccer balls they have is going to look, where's Mike Watts? How can I get in touch with him?
2 changes here for St. Louis. Joey Calistri in his St. Louis debut didn't quite have the impact he was looking for. Austin Martz will come on. He played last year for Orlando City B. And Kyle Gregg, who 2 years ago in Vancouver in August led the Golden Boot race and then went cold over the last year and a half, both with Alan Koch in Cincinnati and in Vancouver to start last year. He comes on as well. Herzog is still down. Now Kyle Gregg sort of changes the whole dynamic here. He really is a true center forward, which allows Herzog to drop a little bit more if he chooses to. Ball wound forward for Herzog, who appreciated the service from Hilton.
Go! Referee!
Fouls against Stanley as we're about a minute away from a hydration break again. Rather a little bit further up the line, beg your pardon, another 15 minutes. Through ball up the right-hand side, Wright, cutting it all the way through. Green. Kyle Gregg almost on the loose.
Kyle Gregg entered this game and right away wanted to make an impact. You see 2 tackles in a row. He's going for the ball, but he's running through, just trying to get to the ball. Not even in an area where he can go directly to goal. He still has a far ways, but he is bringing the effort, trying to win that tackle and just establish his play coming into this game, obviously, with about 30 minutes left. Maybe he'll get the first one.
Maybe.
First goal of the season.
Wow, big mistake there from Tony Walsh. Shot saved, Fennelson. Well, that could have been catastrophic for St. Louis.
Walls just got a bit too complacent there. Enriquez just gets right past him, keeps the effort on the ball. He's able to just get around his body. And that's another one, a tough angle to rip a shot from there.
Jones, Fennelson makes the catch. The local paper in the Rio Grande Valley asked Enriquez what fans can expect from him this year. Said goals, assists, and celebrations. And I really want to see what the third one looks like, but he needs the first to get there. He almost had it.
I love that. Sometimes you hear players say, hard work, try my best,
Come on.
goals. He's like, nope, I'm bringing the goals, bringing the offensive firepower. You're going to see some good celebrations.
Reynolds all the way to Fennelson, who's had maybe his biggest save so far in St. Louis to this point in this last minute or two. No handball there. Gregg dispossessed. Here's Stanley. Runners getting forward for St. Louis. Stanley airmails this out of play for a goal kick. Hear exclusive stories directly from the USL's players in USLsoccer.com's From the Pitch with written and video content that provides unfiltered access and a first-person look into the professional game and the everyday lives of USL players, including Forrest Lasso, who's most recently been featured, now with FC Cincinnati, making the move over from the Charleston Battery. Battery having a couple players. Michael Chang went to Real Monarchs over the offseason. Justin Portillo's out in Salt Lake City now. So the Battery, who led the Eastern Conference for the first half of last season, picked apart a little bit during that transfer window as Adams commits the foul. Ball lobbed ahead for Gregg, caught by Corti.
Beautiful sequence from RGV building up. It started with that really nice ball from Todd Wharton.
Enriquez continuing on, and Walls faces up. Thrown down, Zaldivar, Stanley. And finally now, Enriquez is back to his feet. Stayed down on the far touchline for a moment.
He lost his shoe, had to put it back on.
Really?
Yeah, his shoe fell off.
Oh. All the way past Corti, who's managed to keep both boots on tonight.
Did you think I made that up? He lost his shoe.
It's just so unexpected. I didn't see it coming. RGV allowing 50 goals last year. Changing their entire goalkeeping core over the offseason. Fall overtaken by Wharton, and now finds the space that he had left. Martz does well to get a touch to this. Herzog tossed down by Aguilar. Now Aguilar guilty of a foul, and Lewis Hilton writhing in pain. This is a yellow card.
What set this whole sequence up for St. Louis is you saw Todd Wharton step out of his midfield spot to pressure that ball, and the one that came back into Wall Fall, that is exactly what they were trying to do. When we spoke with Anthony Pulis earlier this week, he was saying that they want to exploit the spaces that are left once RGV steps out, and that's exactly what happened there.
Well, this is a really good position for St. Louis, and they've got a lot of options to choose from. Maybe this is the toughest part of bringing in new players. They brought in 5 or 6 guys who are on the field right now who realistically could try and put this on target.
And last year on different teams were the guy that were on, they were the one taking their free kicks. But this goes back to what we heard, is that they're on the same page when it comes to set pieces. They've practiced this, they've talked about it. So yeah, for us, we can count a ton of different guys who want to take this, but they're on the same page with who's going to do it.
Well, Hilton's taken all the corner kicks to this point. Wall Fall's available too. I usually like his size on set pieces. It'll be Hilton with his left or Fall with his right. Corti will try and make a stop. Wall Fall's become the only man behind the ball now. Wall Fall leaned back too far and never made Corti work for that.
That's the key, what you just said. Corti didn't have to do anything, and that's something I wanted to see from that is hopefully it's on target, because how does Corti respond to this? We saw him set his wall up, telling them where to go, but I wanted to see him under pressure. He's been under pressure from crosses a couple times, corners, and done a good job, but how does he do against a direct shot, really right in front of him?
So far? Oh.
We don't know. Guess we'll find out later.
And that's sort of the concern for every team at the start of the season. You get all these weapons together and you see little things in combination play where you go, okay, when this all comes together, it's going to look really good. But right now, Corti hasn't had to work hard enough, and for St. Louis, that's a little bit disappointing through 68 minutes.
Well, also because the reason it's disappointing for St. Louis is because this might be their best chance to go against a player like Corti, just because it's his first professional game. Now he has almost 69 minutes under his belt playing professional soccer, so he's better than he was at the beginning, but that's their best bet going against him when he's still trying to get used to this level, get used to his team, get used to communicating with them.
Reynolds stepped in front of right, and now Herzog. Fall plays it into a ton of space on the right-hand side. It's a long run, and it gets out. It'll be a throw. Well, if that stays in, their options abound for St. Louis. Hey fans, have you got what it takes to beat the experts on USLsoccer.com? You can show off your knowledge of the league by picking the right results, the USL's matchup, every week of the year. Go on to USLsoccer.com while you still have time for these Saturday matchups. You know, the awkward part about that is you have to choose one team wins or a draw. Herzog saved by Corti. He earned all his money right there. A fantastic leaping parry. It's a corner to St. Louis.
Herzog loves that little bent ball into the far post. Beautiful save from Corti, the extension getting up, the timing of it, because the way that Herzog hit that, he had the really nice spin on it, and this didn't even take much time. He took one quick touch and was able to get across.
Well, that's what Anthony Pulis brought him in to do. Test goalkeepers We've seen shots like that hit Pater before for Corey Hertzog in Pittsburgh. The corner from Stanley, cleared by Jones.
This early in the season, around this time, the field starts to feel even bigger than it is, especially here at HEB Park. This field is massive. It's a beautiful surface. But as the game goes on, still trying to find the fitness, it gets really tough.
On the volley, Hertzog this time trying to add to the degree of difficulty if that's possible.
And he's someone that it doesn't get too tough for. You see him still jogging back into place. And as a defender, seeing Corey Hertzog time after time make his run, wanting the ball, connecting with the ball, it's almost exhausting to look at. It's extremely exhausting to have to defend against, but to feel his energy and you can feel his mentality, you kind of have to take a deep breath and really settle yourself because it's hard to go against that.
Connor Donovan ushering this all the way out for a goal kick. You played in the ACC. You reached the Final Four with Virginia Tech. You played against the top forwards in the country, conceivably, for 4 seasons. Is there anyone who stood out to you where they just ran you into the ground every time you played them?
I didn't go against her too often based on our ages, but Crystal Dunn for North Carolina,
yeah.
I'll never forget. I was playing in the midfield that year, and I was more of a defensive presence, but defensively won the ball, and I took a quick look up to play it, and before I knew it, I looked down to hit the ball, and these blue cleats just took it away, and I'm tracking it back, and I look up, it's Crystal Dunn. She was all over the field in a midfield area, but would just get after our back line, and she was so tough. But then Achena Williams from Florida State, who was your big target forward, but so pacey. It's those players that can kind of do it all. They can be your target or just get behind you. It was so tough to play against.
Service out in front. Greg was arriving, but caught by Corti as Jean Montano has come on, the Colombian, who came on as a preseason trialist and was just signed this week. Zach Wright has come out after a strong RGV debut. As RGV trying to get off on the right foot. Finished second as an expansion team with an outstanding defense under Wilmer Cabrera 2 years ago. They gave up 50 goals last year, a far departure from their excellence in year 1. For St. Louis, big hopes under Preki, eventually wilted down the stretch. They had a chance to make the playoffs and entering those final 9 games, but won just 1 and drew 4, falling out of the playoffs by just 8 points. Both teams with drastically different rosters this year and testing each other into the latter stages of the opening game of the USL season. Ball over Greg, brought down by Hertzog. Reynolds, Stanley, knocked out by Montano. And for the players, it's a welcome sight. The referee calling for a hydration break. Of course, they use a wet bulb thermometer down on the field. The 4th official keeps track of it over the course of the first and second half. And it's up to the referee at midfield as to when to use that hydration break. But if the 4th official were to say to the referee during the game that the wet bulb thermometer had dropped below a certain threshold, they could have said they didn't need the break. Instead, they'll go ahead and pause for a moment. And for Rio Grande Valley, you look forward. It's game 1 of a 3-game homestand. Reno last year, what a great season as an expansion team. Sacramento, Paul Buckle out over the offseason, new coach, and a little bit of a different roster with Fresno especially picking off some of their top players.
And you mentioned that Reno game. I'm interested in how that one goes. I already talked about how it's early, but losing Dane Kelly, Chris Wien signed to San Jose. How does this team look? Obviously very successful, led the USL in offense, pretty much in everything when it comes to offense. How do they look? How does Sacramento look? We had great talks with Paul Buckle last year. He was awesome. His style of play was so specific. What do they look like this year? I'm interested. I don't know.
That's sort of the story of this, isn't it? So many changes over this offseason. Dane Kelly just announced today, signed with DC United. He is down now to Richmond Kickers at the outset of this season, the reigning USL MVP. You look at last year for these teams. They finished with those identical 9 victories, but they just didn't have the right results to come away with a postseason bid.
And seeing that last year maybe just didn't have what it took to make that postseason bid, is how you said it. But also in this game, last year had 2 quite similar records, quite similar stats. If you look across the season, this game is pretty evenly matched. Who has what it takes to make a difference in this game?
This is the second all-time meeting between the teams. They drew in St. Louis 2 years ago. They're in different conferences last year. How about Montano playing it out in front? The turn, the shot, Aguilar scores! Aguilar in his professional debut, the first goal of the USL season. And he's really excited.
The fresh legs from John Montano makes a difference there. He gets around Sam Fink. That's the ball slotted across. I've said it was on. Beautiful turn from Aguilar, and just a nice slotted finish. I've said it time after time. They need to bring that ball across the 6. They've had the numbers there. Aguilar is the one that collects it, the quick turn, and a really nice finish.
The native of Guatemala City out of the University of Virginia gives RGV their opening goal and puts them on the cusp of a 3-point start to their home campaign. Now the impetus on St. Louis to go get one away, try and draw level. The game really can open up with that first goal, even if it is here in the 77th into the 78th minute, fresh off a hydration break, no less. Stanley knocks this ahead. Martz and Green chase all the way to the end line.
Something that we saw quite often with RGV last year, and looking back on it, I don't know if it's a player thing, if it's a coaching thing, if it's a organizational thing brought down from Houston, but this team tends to do better coming out of half, whether that's coming off a conversation with the coach, whether that's regrouping. And it wasn't exactly the same thing there, but you see them coming off that regrouping from the hydration break. Whatever was said, maybe it wasn't said, but that's how it kind of appears, but something happened and the team was able to regroup and respond. You have the fresh legs, the injection from Montano, but there's something about this RGV club that when they have that moment just to kind of touch base with one another one more time, they come out stronger.
Somewhere Jerson Echeverry is thinking, thank you for the kind words about my professional coaching debut.
Yeah, he probably had what he said had nothing to do with that, but I'm going to think it did.
Echeverry coming over from Seton Hall. He's coached at the youth national team level, played at Seton Hall, played professionally, including in Colombia with Wilmer Cabrera, who's now the head coach with the Houston Dynamo. For St. Louis, team that last year scored just 35 goals in 32 games. They're trying to find an answer to Echeverry's powerful words. Ball across, skips off the head of Herzog. Who knows, we may have already seen it. Make sure you cast your vote for the USL Goal of the Week. Vote every Monday evening on USLsoccer.com as the road to the Fans' Choice USL Goal of the Year starts week 1 and continues all season long. Montano giving that pressure. Looks like he has very fresh legs. Stanley continuing still. Montano knocking him over the byline. And this will be a set piece for St. Louis. Whew.
That's a hard tackle against Stanley. He's off balance, hitting the ball with his left foot, just gets run through on that right side of his body. But I can tell you one thing, it's not going to stop him from getting forward. Aiden Stanley has been extremely impressive the way he gets into the attack.
Ball wound across, headed off the crossbar, follow-up is in! Tony Walls for St. Louis levels the match. Herzog carrying the ball back to midfield. In the 82nd minute, the roadside equalizes.
That is a beautiful ball sent in from Hilton. Walls is all over that on the rebound. You can just see the hunger from St. Louis. That is one thing they talked about. They want the hunger for success from their players. And that was all over that goal. Winning the first ball, the deflection off the crossbar, getting the second, and having numbers, different guys who wanted to finish that. Tony Walls, the one who's able to get the job done.
Kadeem Dakers replaces Herzog, who was right there in the box on that goal for St. Louis. Kadeem Dakers will make his debut coming over from FC Cincinnati. And before that, he was with Louisville City. And the elder statesman for Rio Grande Valley has come on. Victor Garza, all of an elderly 26. He's the oldest player on the roster.
Go on!
Out off Reynolds, the USL's official Twitter feed keeps you up to date with news, live game updates, and highlights from around the league 24/7. Follow @USL on Twitter. You know, we've already talked about goal of the week enough, but it's probably worth saying again after Tony Walls somersaulting a goal in, even on the doorstep. Goal of the week voting starts on Monday night. And Tony Walls, who isn't exactly a known goal-scoring commodity, getting St. Louis on the board and staking his claim.
I think St. Louis guy could become just the way that we talk about. That can become just a phrase, and you know what it means. Towards the end of the season, everyone is going to know what a St. Louis guy is, and have a feeling I'm going to be calling players on other teams, oh, that's a St. Louis guy.
Right.
Because you just know what you're going to expect from them. It's that effort, the energy, just getting the job done. It might not always be pretty, but they're going to put in that effort.
Montano keeping that for RGV. He's been a real shot in the arm off the bench, including the assist on what at the time was a go-ahead goal in the 77th minute for Pablo Aguilar. This is Garza. Corner coming for RGV.
All right, friends, it's another HCC corner kick.
Corner for Garza. Knotted out. Aguilar. Off the clearance by Greg. Wharton. Couldn't slip it through. Greg couldn't find it. Garza, who came on for Chuy Enriquez, throws in again.
I've been impressed with the awareness of this RGV midfield. Todd Wharton, Pablo Aguilar, if it's not on, they're not forcing it. We saw a little bit of that earlier, I think, just trying to find their teammates, just get used to one another, but now they're finding time so they can pick their head up, see if that ball central or ball to their attackers is open, and if it's not, they're able to swing it around or pull it back and then try again.
Lifted by Kyle Adams. Adams again. The rookie out of San Diego State. Knocked out by the future Duke Blue Devil, Stanley. Gotta think there's going to be a couple matchups that are going to divide the locker room in March Madness this year. Ball wound up the left side. This is Dakers. Dakers crossing, cleared. Adams, Donovan launches into the stands.
That's a dangerous idea played across from Dakers. Greg wanted that to get there. He was just a step behind his defender, but that ball that swung across, it's in between the defender and the goalkeeper, and it forces them to make a decision.
Goal kick on the way for RGV, and we'll see how Dakers fits into this whole thing. It never really did work out for him in Cincinnati, but in truth, when John Harkes left the team in the final weeks before the 2017 season, things sort of changed for several players on that roster, and you could say the same for Derek Luke, who's starting for RGV tonight. Just didn't figure in the same way under Alan Koch, who brought in some players he was a bit more familiar with. Corti drives this away.
Dakers is a player that's a good spark.
Yep.
When you need something different, when you need that energy, when you need the injection of a player like Dakers, I mean, he is that guy. He'll bring the different dimension. When you're playing against defenders and they're tired and you bring in Dakers, it's a whole new ballgame.
13 in white, who's currently pressuring Kai Green. If you think about a coach, Corti, danger there. That'll be a goal kick in the end. Greg is trying to argue for a deflection. If there's one place that the front three get subbed in and out so often and Dakers could make a big impact, it was where he was 2 years ago under James O'Connor in Louisville. And so he really made his hay doing that. Went to Cincinnati, and well, this year, a fresh start in St. Louis.
And if you think about him with this St. Louis team, you have, if you're looking at the starters tonight, in Valesky and Herzog, two players that work really well together, and then you bring in a Greg that has a different dimension, and then if you go to your fourth sub, or if they're intermixed, they're all different than one another, so they can all have a role.
That's caught there. You know, with the Central Conference likely on the way in coming years, Jake Edwards has spoken about it plenty. Kadeem Dakers might be a guy who completes Central Conference bingo before anybody else. If he stays around long enough, he's just ticking boxes off the list. It's like the Jaromir Jagr of the NHL Atlantic Division. Like you said, we'll see how it all shakes out with him. Reynolds. Too far there for Aiden Stanley in the final minute plus before stoppage time. It's a 1-1 match. Pablo Aguilar in the 77th minute, getting a pass from John Montano just off the bench. And Tony Walls, the response in the 82nd minute, ball off the crossbar that fell kindly to him. He cycled it in from a couple feet outside the goal. It's just the start of week 1 in the USL. Is there a late winner to be had to separate the standings for these two? Wall Fall does really well to get away from Garza at the outset. Dakers after it. Echeverry, huh?
Not a bad touch, especially off a clearance like that.
And those are not soccer cleats.
Oh, that's a good point, especially with that footwear he's got. Really nice. I mean, he was in the Hall of Fame at Seton Hall.
Yeah.
Obviously a good player, played in Columbia after college.
Hilton, Wharton got in there. Aguilar, the goal scorer for RGV. I just read something this week from Anthony Pulis that the big hulking defenders, generally the legs are a little tired when they get into preseason. You try and get everybody healthy. But it's the guys, the real technical ones with the great touch. You don't lose that over the offseason typically. Echeverry did not lose it over the offseason. Saldivar. In the first minute of 3 in stoppage time. Way over Montano. Throw here for St. Louis.
Hey, we can continue keeping the ball.
Hopping ball. Kyle Gregg was looking for a foul. Kai Green throws in. Win or lose, Anthony Pulis said this week, there's going to be a lot of work to be done starting on Saturday for the rest of the year. Always feels good to get 3 points. Never feels good to get 0, but there's a long way to go. Wharton got slung down there. And there is the whistle, ceding the throw back to St. Louis.
Obviously, this is the first game of the season for these teams, but kind of going off of what Coach Pulis said about how the work comes Saturday, this is really their first week where they have to deal with recovery and getting ready for another game where you have to be in top form. It's time to start the season. And if you think about that, obviously you gear up for the first game, but it's also how do you recover from it? How do you get ready for the next one?
RGV doesn't play for 10 days. A midweek matchup with Reno. St. Louis next at San Antonio next Saturday night. They get a 7-day layoff before heading to the Alamo City. And all numbers forward for St. Louis here. Is there a late winner at the death? Well, they share the spoils as Walls got thrown down. He's back into the line. It is a throw, and that's sort of the discussion here. I think a lot of people felt that Wharton had grabbed the jersey of Wall Fall, slung him down, and that there was a foul there.
Does the ref add more time for his poor communication here?
Yes.
I thought that was a free kick because you could see the grab.
Right.
And he looked like he spoke with Wharton once the ball went out.
Right. What do you think he thinks? Picture's worth 1,000 words.
I don't think I can say it right now.
Right. Well, referee's looking at his watch. There should be a little bit of time left here after that little bit of lapse in communication through the legs of Stanley.
Last 4 minutes you played, you put 3 out.
And there it is, full time. Hot and muggy in South Texas, and RGV, St. Louis, new coaches, very new teams, split the 2 points tonight. It's RGV 1 and St. Louis 1. Morgan, if you are RGV, you had a lead in this game. What's the takeaway for the home side?
Obviously, it's never fun or never happy when you have the win and then have to drop a couple points, more points than you would have, but there's a lot of positives to take away. They found their style of play as the game went on. They found the ball wide, a beautiful goal built off what they were doing well, so they were able to capitalize as the game went on. But early on, all over the field really, getting forward was Saldivar in that attacking midfield role, and that's early when we found this RGV team starting to find the ball wide. Nothing really came from it, but they were at least trying. Obviously, the beautiful rip from Todd Wharton getting forward. He kind of found his way on the ball more and was a little bit more patient. Going the other way, Corey Herzog, early on putting this RGV team under pressure. But as this second half started, this is when we really found the RGV attack get going a little bit. They found the ball wide, whether it was individually or playing it through. And those two options that they had, those two chances, was then what set up their goal, getting the ball wide and then choosing to send it in.
That was Herzog driving it off Corti. Both he and Fennelson made big saves in this one. Here's the goal, 77th minute, Aguilar from Montano.
And Aguilar's just wide open. You see him see this space. Montano, just nice individual work, but whips the ball across, and just in space is Aguilar. He's able to turn. That's a difficult turn, and hit it with his left foot. Just a really nice finish. And they had those options earlier, but they finally were able to connect. And then St. Louis with a great response, winning the first ball, bounces off the crossbar, and then Tony Walls just doing what he has to do to finish this.
Off the crossbar from Wallfall, and then Tony Walls, 5 minutes later, 82nd minute, levels the match as it neared full time. Here are your full-time statistics. Again, this game at halftime statistically was very similar. At post-game, it's very similar. It's fair that they each got a point.
It is, but for both sides, it came alive a little bit more in the second half. And I'm impressed with that, with it being the first match, just the improvement that we saw from the first couple minutes. Because early on, we weren't sure how this game was going to go. Is it a whole game of trying to see how do we play? No, they got better as the game went on, and I think that is a positive for both of these sides to take away.
And both teams can look forward to week number 2 in the United Soccer League. RGV is off for about 10 days' time, but these fans get to come out again for an early morning match, 10 a.m. Central. They take on the highest scoring team in USL in 2017, Reno 1868. Pay a visit to HEB Park in Edinburgh, Texas, while St. Louis looks forward to another road game at San Antonio. So it's a 1-1 final tonight in Edinburgh. A fair result to be sure. 77th minute, Pablo Aguilar, first goal as a professional. St. Louis would respond with one of their own in the 82nd from Tony Walls. For Morgan Conklin, director Gage Tillotson, producer Ava Ponte, Brian Walls, and our entire team in Edinburgh. Mike Watts saying so long for now. The first game of the USL season has a couple highlight reel goals. It finishes RGV 1, St. Louis 1. Good night.
This copyrighted telecast of the United Soccer League may not be retransmitted, rebroadcast, or reproduced without the express written consent of the United Soccer League.